Welcome to the Power of Lifting podcast. I'm EricCafferty, owner of the Mecca Gym. I am a strength and conditioning coach and a contest prep specialist. The focus of this podcast is to dive into the mindset and the drive of people who have done incredible things with their lives. Holy Toledo! Oh, there we go. Volume. Checking everybody's earbuds.
Yeah,
to listen to this. This is amazing.
It's going to be a phenomenal start.
This is great. Welcome. Oh man, whoever's getting a massage in the room next door is in for a treat today. Oh man, welcome to the Power of Lifting podcast. We have an extra special guest, all the way from the woods of Montana.
Oh boy,
Coach Paulie Campbell. Welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
Welcome.
This has been great.
Dude, I'm
looking forward to this.
I'm so stoked, man. This is great. Thank you for flying to town, first of all. Second of all, I'm just super stoked to have you on the podcast. This is going to be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for reaching out.
So yeah, tell the people who you are.
So my name's Paulie Campbell. I'm a professional natural bodybuilder or drug-free bodybuilder. And actually, a little funny backstory. I met EricCafferty, the owner of Mecca, here back in 2018 when I snagged my pro card in Boise, Idaho.
Yes. At Bora High School.
At Bora High School.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yep. Northwest Natural, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time, and Eric started talking to my wife and I outside of the high school after the show was over, and I was a little suspect at first because I'm like, oh, he's going to try to nab me as a client. Really good conversation, super genuine. I'm glad our paths crossed. We had a good conversation about prep and what Eric does, and he extended an invite for us to come lift the following morning at his gym. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make it, but a year later, I signed up with Eric. He did all my programming and really helped pave the way for not only improving myself, but I learned a ton from Eric. So thank you for creeping on me after that pro show. I really appreciate it.
Crushed it, shredded.
Just shredded.
Well,
I'm sure. A pro card's no small feat.
The veins were in the works. Yeah. So at the time you were working with Cliff, right? Cliff Wilson.
Yep. Cliff Wilson did my prep.
Yep. And his peaking is pretty unique, I would say. He takes a pretty unique rapid backloading approach, which is really risky. Because most people screw that up, but he's kind of got a formula that he uses and ways to calculate amounts of carbs, sodium, water, other electrolytes, and whatnot. And his clients do super, super well in the natural bodybuilding circuit. And I think he's kind of branched out into doing some like IFBB stuff now.
Yeah, definitely a whiz. I'll call him a magician when it comes to prep. And all stuff aside, he made me do some really unorthodox things that he warned me about.
He warned you about it, right?
Like no cardio for the whole prep. I was just mind blown because I've been competing for about 15 years, and I've always had cardio as a staple. And what we did 5 years ago is different than what we did, 2 years ago or last year. So it's just kind of interesting to see how the sport is continuing to evolve and the methods are becoming so much more efficient, and for the right reasons too. So, but that's enough about competing. I just want to give you a little backstory about how I met Eric. I live in Montana with my beautiful wife Nikki, and we built a house in the mountains. And I'm so glad we did that because last year COVID can just suck it. That was just really
That's right. I was really jealous of you last year. I told you that this morning. I'm like, dude, Paul's living the life up in the woods right now.
Yeah.
I'm stuck next to all these damn people that are going crazy.
Yeah. Literally, like we're on the top of a mountain, and it was just kind of. I've actually grown not to like people because I was so secluded for a while. I just go out on my deck in my pajamas in the morning and fire off my Smith & Wesson 460, and I don't have to worry about anybody complaining. And
amazing.
So
that's a morning routine.
Oh yeah,
it is. It is a morning routine.
Wake you up.
Yeah. So we've lived in Montana for about just under 10 years, and we've been in our new home for 5 years. really don't want to give you a huge dissertation.
What's your educational background like?
Yeah, so I actually have 3 degrees, which people might not know about me. So, and this was part of my growing experience. So I started off, I lived with my parents for my associate's degree. I went to the technical college in Wausau, Wisconsin, and got my associate's degree in marketing. And then after that, I went on to University of Wisconsin Stout, played Division I rugby, and got my background in business administration with finance emphasis. And that was more of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just, kind of picked a major. I thought I might like sales and business because that's what my dad was in. So, and then after that, I worked in that field for about a year and really just didn't like it. I didn't like putting on a suit. I didn't like.
Yeah, what'd you do?
So I did a couple things. First and foremost, I was a marketing executive, so I would go out and kind of talk to other companies, small and large companies, about how they can enhance their portfolio with different marketing strategies and come up with different proposals and things like that. But the challenge was that was back in 2007 and 2008 when the housing market really took a dive, and I had quite a few different proposals on the table and contracts ready to be signed. But when the housing market crashed, everybody just kind of pumped the brakes on their marketing budget, and that really,
which is the wrong thing to do. Just FYI.
Right. Yep, exactly. And it actually came back to bite quite a few of those businesses.
Absolutely.
So I ended up really just having a kind of a hard look at what I wanted to do, and I did live with my parents for that job as well. So right out of undergrad, I lived with them for about a year. Those of you who do not know, and it was actually a good experience because I actually didn't like living with my parents because I still felt like, I was kind of being watched to some degree, and I grew up in a military family. My dad was in the Marines for 30 years, and that's a story for a different day. I love both my parents. I think they did an exceptional job raising me, but I had to get out. So after that, I went on to work for a retail store as the manager. So I worked for Gander Mountain as their hunting manager. And I had worked for Gander Mountain for 15 years as an archery tech, so I already had my foot in the door. And really at that point, I didn't know it at the time, but I was just grasping for something different.
Is it just something that you felt like on the inside, like you'd wake up in the morning and just, it's not quite right?
Yeah, so I tried for Gander Mountain. Yeah,
or just not where you wanted. Like you knew you were there and it was okay, but you were like, no. I think I need to take a little step back.
It was kind of a Band-Aid at that point. And when you work for somebody else, you kind of, especially in retail, you work for 60 hours a week and just kind of, is this something you want to do? And I look back to my undergrad years, and I have to thank Braden Soul. Shout out to you, Braden. He's one of my best friends. He's a retired professional drug-free bodybuilder. Now he's a national level strongman competitor. And
there you go.
He introduced me to Division I rugby during undergrad school, and he was actually my lifting partner for my entire undergrad career. And honestly, if Braden and I didn't cross paths, I don't think I'd be where I am today. I don't think I would have taken this particular path. I don't think he knows it, but he was an integral part of where I am today. So I went to work for this retail store, and that's how Braden kind of ties into it. And I started thinking about, my experience through life, and I'm like, man, what do I really like? And I'm like, you know what? I need to go back to school for my master's, but in what? I'm like, exercise, nutrition. So I was in lacrosse at the time, which has an exceptional nutrition program, but the waiting list was like 2 years long.
Oh, good Lord.
And to give you all background, I was like a C student in high school. Like I wasn't, and it wasn't for lack of effort. It was, I just wasn't a good student. I liked to dick around, I didn't like to do my homework. I liked to go outside and play. And
I can relate.
Right. So I'm like, well, I got to look somewhere else. So I ended up going back to Stevens Point, Wisconsin for my master's in nutritional science. And, at that particular time, I was already in my mid-20s. I had to relearn schooling all over again, write a letter of intent, do the GRE, which is just a joke in general.
Yeah.
And it's a money grab for those of you looking to go to school. Sidetrack, but...
Amen to that.
Well, there you go. There's a PSA for everyone.
Yeah. So I went back to school in my mid-20s for my master's in nutritional science at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. And that's really kind of where things started to flourish. I worked for Adventure 212 Fitness, which is this really prestigious health club. and I ended up starting out by selling personal training packages.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
there you go.
And so I got paid like 10 or 11 bucks an hour to sell these personal training packages, and I would feed these trainers, and I would sell between $5,000 and $15,000 in personal training a month.
Oh, wow.
And so I started thinking about it. I'm like, I'm getting paid 10, 12 bucks an hour, and I proposed to the owner. I'm like, I'll do this if you give me a commission. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then I want to be a trainer. So I ended up during grad school getting my certification, because you had to have a nationally recognized certification, which I think is appropriate. So I went through all those hoops, and during that time I started selling personal training packages and just backloading my schedule, 6 months out, 6 months out. And so when I finished taking my exam for the National Academy of Sports Medicine, I hit the ground in grad school with 30 to 40 hours of training.
Oh, that's cool.
So
I love the confidence in that, though. It's just like, okay, meet with me at this time, and then pass the test, and then we're hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
Because there is the risk. I'm sure you're confident in yourself, but there is the risk of not passing that, and then you're like, oh, sorry, wait a little longer.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna hit it, and we're gonna go.
Yeah, and it was, I had so many different variables, grad school, writing papers, giving presentations. So I seem to function really well when my plate is full, versus like when I have one or two things, I'll procrastinate.
Yeah.
I know Eric can relate.
Similarities there.
Yeah, dude. Oh man, if you don't have a million things going on, it's hard to focus on one of them.
It's
You
kind
know
of
what
a
I mean?
fascinating thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a, if you look into like a lot of the research on like ADD, ADHD type stuff, that's kind of how, one of the things that they'll recommend is, you have a bunch of things going on at once. It'll actually help you focus on one thing. It's weird, but yeah.
It's more of a, you got so many irons in the fire, you gotta handle them all. And
Yeah.
that's how I function. I do well at it. So I ended up having a really full schedule throughout my entire graduate career. And then it just kind of morphed. I met my wife, Nikki, through Facebook. We were both, she competed in one show in figure, and I competed in, it was like my 5th or 6th show. And I had Facebook at the time. I don't have that anymore. But I met her through online social media, and she worked for a Mayo Clinic in Rochester at their corporate wellness center doing adaptive fitness. And she is just a whiz when it comes to adaptive fitness with spinal cord injuries and amputees and things like that. So I ended up moving to Rochester after grad school, and we both had ties to Montana. So we ended up just after a year picking up and moving out there. And so right now I work for a healthcare company called Premise, which recently bought out the healthcare company called Care Here. And so I'm a corporate employee. I really love what I do. It is super flexible. They practice what they preach. And we provide care to state employees in Helena, Montana, which is the capital of Montana. So they have the largest employee hub for state employees. And that's going really well, but I have some pretty hard decisions to make here coming up, and for all the right reasons and good reasons. It's not because I don't like what I do, but I really enjoy it.
Right.
I recently went into business with a really good friend of mine, Andrew Schubert. He's the dude that lifts. And before I forget, I've got a couple shirts for the coach here. The Do the Fucking Work shirt and the One Nation Under the Bar.
Yes.
I have to do a little, not really a sales pitch, but for those of you listening to the podcast, go check out Dude That Lifts for some of their their apparel.
Oh yeah.
We'll get them tagged down below.
Oh
there.
yeah. Nice. Sweet. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
One Nation Under the Bar. I love
That's
that.
right.
Yeah, and he's got a pretty cool video on that, and I think it was primed perfectly for everything that the entire country and world, in fact, experienced last year during COVID. So if you have a moment, go check out Dude That Lifts on Instagram and Facebook, and if you can relate, support him, buy some of his stuff. I don't get any money from it. I just enjoy supporting people and celebrating their journey. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been training people for a long time, and Andrew just asked me out of the blue in a text, do you want to open a gym? Like, I'm thinking about, we should get a warehouse. Do you just want to open this badass gym? And without hesitation, I responded, fuck yes. Like, and I don't know what your audience is, so disclaimer, there might be some trucker mouth going on here.
No,
but
you're good.
fuck yes. And this was about 6-7 months ago, and we're 2 weeks away from opening our own gym. And within that gym, it's a big warehouse facility essentially, and within that warehouse we're going to have the Do That List brand, and then Dark Mountain, which is a supplement company that he also owns, and we're kind of sharing this space, which is really kind of cool. But the gym's going to be called The Bar, and the unique part of The Bar is, and I got to say that, I got to give credit where credit's due, Eric. This isn't my first time at the Mecca, and just kind of seeing what you do for your career and how you enrich, people's lives and get that job, career satisfaction and fulfillment is, I always told myself I never want to open a gym. I don't want to, and here I am. I'm opening a gym. So it's like this tidal wave is pushing me this direction.
You won't regret it.
No, and that's kind of where, I kind of think about. I'm like, this feels right. And so the unique part about this gym is it's called The Bar, and we're not experiencing any expense when it comes to equipment. We don't have like 5,000 square feet of gym space, but we have enough. It's just under 1,300 square feet in this warehouse where it's only by appointment. So if you want to get in and use some of the best equipment in town in Helena, Montana, you got to sign up to work with me. And that way I don't have to worry about memberships, at least at this point in time. And I have such a robust client schedule that I think it's going to work pretty well. And if it doesn't, we've positioned ourselves where it just would be a personal gym. So,
Yeah.
So that's
Nothing wrong with that either.
So that's kind of cool. So we spent last week a few hours each day just kind of unloading equipment and putting it together.
Yeah,
So,
no, congrats, man. That's awesome.
yeah, I'm really excited to share that. And so yeah, here I am. Yeah, what else do you want to know? I know we got a lot of the agenda today.
Let's hear some crowning achievements. What are some of the things that you're most proud of?
So first and foremost, I'm an Eagle Scout, and some of you may not think that's a big deal, but when you're an adolescent, the paperwork and the community service and volunteering that you have to
That's
do.
a lot.
It is a lot. No,
It's quite I think it's a good achievement, something to hang your hat on. I mentioned I'm a professional bodybuilder. That's something I've always wanted to do or accomplish since I started back in the early 2000s, and I have 3 different degrees. Not that degrees or education from a school institution is super important. I think it, depending on what field you might go into, it could pay off.
Absolutely.
I didn't think I would pass my associates, and here I am with a master's. So I think that kind of shows my work ethic.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of paper. Getting a master's degree is a ton of writing. Good God.
It's terrible.
Dude, so many papers.
I mean, I don't have mine, but to see, and then my wife, she's got a doctorate, and so it's like the amount of stuff is unbelievable. But also not even the stuff, but just like I feel like when someone talks about doing their master's or advanced degrees or whatever, there's this level of having to jump through these hoops.
Oh, dude, it's totally what it is.
And you just jump through each hoop, and then there's just like a professor, or there's this exam, or there's this one thing that just wants to knock you out. Like there's just something there that for some reason it's just this Joker figure. They just want to like make your life a living hell for no reason. And you got to get through that, and then you got to do it again.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. It's amazing.
At the time, it's like a huge hassle, and then in hindsight, you're like, "What was that all for?" But I mean, really, a lot of the master's degrees and stuff. It's a lot of self-study, right? Like you're reading research and coming up with your own ideas and things like that.
It's one of those things where you put what you put in, you get out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like most of life, but it's
Yeah.
very much that as well. It's not this guided thing. It's
Yeah,
self-guided.
I mean, you could totally coast for sure, but if you, it's hard. It is hard though.
Yeah, and I will be the first to admit I'm not a good writer, so I spent much of my college career in during my master's in the writing lab, just getting help. How can I, because the one thing that my graduate degree taught me is developing critical thinking skills.
Oh, yeah.
Like all textbook stuff aside, like that's great, but there is no amount of schooling that can prepare you for real life. I don't care what avenue you decide to go down. And so I would spend a lot of my time in the writing lab learning how to become a better writer. And it's still something I struggle with today, but it's something that, I think continually needs practice, and, you have to communicate with people, right? So
absolutely.
Nice.
Which is weird. I love speaking. I love public speaking.
Yeah.
And I like talking in front of, I don't care.
Groups of people. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird, like, how those two kind of intermix, but one of them is lacking. So, but yeah, that's I would say those.
That's awesome.
Those are some of my accomplishments, and the biggest accomplishment is obviously, I think, opening this gym. I'm really proud of that.
No, it's awesome. I mean, since we worked together, I've seen you kind of were training like a few people probably when we started working together, and then over time, now you're,
Yep.
You've really kind of moved that direction in terms of like career path and seeing. I mean, it is, like you said, even if you have a job you like, there's something that's different about being, a coach and training people and doing a good job and seeing how much positive impact and influence you can have on people's lives. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you get to wear sweatpants and a t-shirt, and that's
Yeah.
just the cherry on
Change
top.
lives,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You don't need a suit to change lives.
No, absolutely not. Dude, short shorts and a tank top, baby. That's where it's at.
Short
Yeah.
shorts and a tank top.
Joggers, pajamas. Where you wear your pajamas.
That's another
to
shirt
work.
idea right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
I love it.
Cool. So, how has exercise enhanced your life? So, background wise, you mentioned that you really got into working out and training with your buddy in college. But tell us a little bit about that and what kind of how you grew into the sport of bodybuilding. How did you get interested in the sport of bodybuilding?
My friend Braden Soul. I met him in the locker room in undergrad, and I remember the exact conversation we had because I saw the rugby practice going on indoors, and I thought that was interesting. And so, I asked him, when's the next practice? And he's like, it'd be really cool if you could make it. And so I went to practice inside, and I was hooked, and I played with a couple All-American rugby players that were, one of the guys' names was Lurch. He's like 6'6", 240, just stacked, just a
mammoth.
just a horse. And he's played international rugby. And I remember, this is a little sidetrack here, but I remember my first rugby match, the only match I scored a try in my entire career. Coach Bluey puts me in, he goes, just follow Fry. And it was like covering a fucking racehorse. It was terrible. Like, all I did was follow him around the field and clear people off of, just ruck the shit out of people. And that's how I learned to play. I followed what Aaron Fry did. And that was the coolest experience, lighting people up on the field. Just so much rage and aggression. But after you get hurt a few times, you got to kind of tame that back. So, but anyways, kind of getting back into fitness. So Braden had been interested in bodybuilding, and I think he competed a couple times before I bet him. So he just said, "Hey man, you should compete. You have a good foundation. We've been training together." And so I ended up competing in the Ford show in Madison with him in the mid 2000s, and I was hooked. I mean,
Sweet.
yeah, I posted a picture a while ago, but at the time I thought it looked good, but I look back now and go, man, you had no business on stage. And I think we all
Dude,
kind of get to that point.
Everybody's first show. I mean, dude. Back in the day, like there just wasn't good coaching available. Like especially at that time, there was like, one or two decent coaches floating around at that point in time. Like it was, yeah, and people didn't really like the level from then to now.
Oh my gosh!
Holy crap, dude! It's a different ball game nowadays.
Like for any of you listening, if you want to compete in bodybuilding, whether you're male or female, it does not matter. You need to go look at the level of conditioning that these shows are putting, of the athletes.
It's phenomenal.
And you need to have an objective outlook on, are you ready to get to that level? Because if you're not, then don't waste your time.
Yeah,
because
It's not really one of
you'll
those
get
things where
dusted.
let me just go try it maybe.
No.
Because that commitment level won't get you there.
That's the
Right.
biggest thing, like in talking to people that do want to compete. And a lot of times people will seek out coaching when there's like a show in 12 weeks. And you're like,
Gosh.
yeah, let's rethink that a bit. You know what I mean? It just takes so much time, not only to build the metabolic capacity, but also to build the physique to where it needs to be. Like, you're not just going to miraculously put on 20 pounds of lean mass and prep, quite the contrary. People think that they're just going to pull a, Kevin LeBron and grow into the show. And it's like, dude, that's not how it works.
No, and growing into a show is misinterpreted. That's just essentially carb loading and doing it correctly to make your muscle glycogen fill out.
Right.
You're not specifically adding more muscle mass. And
No.
your comment about, gaining 20 pounds, like, I'm not gonna like, so if somebody tells you, oh, just put on 30 pounds in the off season, I don't care how much you're taking. If you're, choosing to use, performance enhancement, if somebody says that, it's a clear indication that they have no idea what they're talking about.
None.
Like, it is incredibly difficult to put on lean mass as a seasoned competitor, or even new. Like, your newbie gains aren't that great.
Yeah.
So to put on 30 pounds in a year,
Just doesn't happen.
no. And I would say a big percentage is body fat, not muscle.
Yeah, I mean, and if you do, then God bless you. You know what I mean? Like, we were talking to a couple weeks ago when Jay Cutler came to town. We were talking to him about when he started, and he was talking about how he responded super well, super quick, super young when he started, and even still, it took him several years to get to where he was,
right?
Really competitive at, I guess the high level. I mean, he was super successful when he started competing, but it still took, it was not 12 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for most of us that are not Jay Cutler, which is most of us, right? I mean, it takes even longer, right?
Yep.
I mean, how long have you been working out, training?
Seriously, consistently since I was about 21, and I'm 37 this October. So
16, 17 years.
Yeah.
And I'm 30, and I started lifting relatively seriously, maybe not correctly, but relatively seriously when I was 15 probably. So I'm about 15 years deep into seriously training, and it's, even as I sit here, I'm probably 210, I weigh in the low 200s in the morning right now, and I'm not contest ready by any means, but probably 10 pounds away from it. And then, you've been training for 16, 17 years, and you're how tall? 6'2", 6'3"?
Yeah.
And your contest weight is around, what, 200-ish?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're looking at two guys. I'm about 6 feet tall, and I'm about, a solid, in the mid 190s on stage. And, Paul's a couple inches taller, and he's, probably 205 on stage. And these are two guys that have been pushing it hard for a decade and a half and change, right? And so you get all these people talking about oh, I'm, a shredded 220 on stage, and it's like, well, okay, all right, slow your roll, buddy. I mean, and granted, we're both natural athletes, but even still, if you are taking performance enhancement, which that's to each their own, I'm not talking down at all because it's just different, but you're still not going to add that amount of size. You're not going to be that big. You know what I mean? You're going to be a lot lighter than you think you need to be on stage, guaranteed, in order to be shredded. Because that's what people don't understand. A lot of people might look at even Paul in his off season and go, oh man, you're looking really good, you must be close, right? I bet you get that comment all the time.
Honestly, I got that question a couple weeks ago, and people are like, "God, you carbing up for a show?" I'm like, I'm vascular by nature, so I think that can be a bit deceiving. But no, I'm nowhere near.
What's your body weight right now?
I haven't weighed myself, but I'm probably around 220, 225. And
so 20 pounds out.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, yeah, you look good, but go put your picture of how you look, and you probably do look good, and put it next to a picture of somebody who's on stage. There's a complete difference.
Oh, totally.
Being in shape versus being stage lean. And to give you, I work with Peter Fitchden for my World Championship prep last year, and we worked a year ahead of time to get into the off-season for my off-season weight because I had to put on more size because I would always naturally hover between 215 and 220. I just didn't like being heavy. We got up over 230. I was closer to 235, but I still peeled down to 200 pounds. So, you don't need to put, I didn't put 30 pounds of muscle on. I think I might have put maybe a pound and a half of significant lean mass during that off-season, mass phase.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't, 10 pounds of muscle. That's just not how it works.
Right.
And my cut was 10 and a half months.
Yeah.
and I didn't do any cardio, so I know I preserved as much muscle as possible.
Yeah.
And so it's
you
it's
just don't
deceiving.
realize how much fat you can really carry, and you can look contest ready in certain body parts, right? Like your arms don't carry a lot of fat typically.
Right.
Some guys don't really hold it in their legs a whole lot.
Right.
You know, I don't really hold much fat in my upper half in general, like especially my abs and my back. I almost carry none. And so, you know, if I have sweats on and, you know, my shirt off, I can look close to contest ready, 15 pounds over contest weight.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you peel everything off and start looking at, you know, every muscle group and what that needs to look like. And you realize really quick, you lose 5 pounds. You're like, oh, still not there. You lose 5 more pounds. Oh, still not there. You lose 5 more pounds. Oh, okay, we're getting closer, but still not there, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't realize like how much fat loss it really takes to get that true peeled look everywhere. Not just in your arms, not just in your chest. Like we're talking like clamshell glutes, you know, striations, feathering all over your quads, like all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's not an ab show. It's not everybody has abs on stage. Nobody cares. Like you don't win shows because of abs. You win shows for completely different reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, I worked with Eric. I've been a client of Eric's for a while, for a few years actually, and he did all my programming. And I would consider myself an advanced lifter, based on experience, different training protocols, etc. And I was, you know, one of the reasons I hired Eric because I saw the amount of clients that he was having positive return on investment with, and so I started working with Eric, and his training protocols were a little different than I was used to. I was definitely not only training in the 8 to 10 rep range. I was, you know, time sets, 30 reps, blood flow. I mean, there's
You name it.
You name it, it's all on there.
And some people might disagree with it, but you're wrong because you're sticking with that 8 to 10 rep range. And I think that rep range can be beneficial if your loads of, you know, volume is equated for. But all I can say is that I got spanked at Worlds. I took 4th out of 5th. I got spanked in placings, but my conditioning, like compared to any other show I've done, and I think I've done over like 15 shows, was the best. And my size was the best. So really I didn't care about placings. Like just the fact that I could compete at World Championships was enough for me.
Absolutely.
Oh, dude, it was,
you know,
I was honored to have seen that in person.
When
it
was
great.
that? October last year.
October last year. I remember
Kansas City.
Like I was part of the team at that point, so I remember started following everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was cool to see.
Yeah, he and Corey both did that show.
Corey Wagner, and she looked phenomenal.
Just
absolutely
insane.
Incredible, everything. And she was, she's. Go give her a follow, Corey Wagner. She's the best.
Coag, shout out.
Coag, yeah, we miss you, Coag. Sorry we couldn't make it this weekend, but so and that's kind of another little side note is placings are the same 5 heavyweights could go under a different panel of judges, and the placings could be completely different. So
everybody's so talented at that level,
right.
You know. And you know the thing is, I think Carl Severt won heavyweights at that show.
I felt like a child standing next to him.
I mean, he's just a moose, man. Like the dude's upper body is like just insane. I mean, it's not to say his legs are bad. It's just his upper body is so dominant. You know,
dense.
He's just dense. Yeah, like the shoulders and arms on that guy and chest is just like, dude, like don't stand next to him.
We had a shot backstage with our crew, and I was standing next to Carl. I'm like, I don't want to picture backstage with you, Carl, because you make me look like I don't even lift, and I'm 200 pounds. Like, and he's a freak.
He is also like around 200 pounds. And shredded.
Him and I are, I think.
He's how tall though? He's like.
I think he's a little shorter than me.
He's like my height, probably, right?
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like, you can't change your insertion points. Like some people, like I have long limbs. So, like, to get that really big 3D look, I can't change. You gotta
So
have a lot
does
more
height
muscle.
play a big,
huge role? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Think about like if you're stretching a bone out and
Right.
you have the same amount of muscle fibers that are just getting longer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then like tendon length, and
Yep.
then fiber density. I mean, it's just there's a lot of factors. But yeah, tall
that
guys
was
with
my
long
complaint
limbs.
in high school. Like
Yeah.
with all these guys.
Oh, yeah,
just
these
like, I
little-
got bigger biceps than you, Hunter. I'm like, yeah, if I was your size, I'd be triple your size.
Well,
man.
and that's actually funny because a lot of times, like if you were to actually measure, like by the circumference measurement, like it's not crazy different. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But it's not about a tape measure. It's what it looks like,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So these little guys, they might have smaller muscle, like by circumference, but it's all about the illusion
Yeah.
with bodybuilding.
Yeah, and the more shredded you are underneath that stage lighting, the leaner and bigger you look. Like, look at Brian Whitaker. He's like, I don't know how many times he's won the national or world championships, but he's not even 100. Was he 170 pounds?
I think he's like, I don't know.
He's not 200,
but
He's not 200, that's
he's
for sure.
like he's like 170. He's one of the smaller guys, but he's like dense and three-dimensional and
Yep.
just beyond shredded.
Yeah.
Like,
Does it make it easier to be shorter? Is that something to say, or not
well,
necessarily?
sort
I don't think easier is the
Yeah,
the
it's-
right.
I'm
the right-
going. I'm going maybe
It's-
devil's advocate here.
It's not. You still have to put the same amount of effort in. I think the illusion plays in your favor when you're shorter.
Okay.
If you're conditioned enough.
It does. But here's the thing. I think the bigger guy, if you're able to fill out, will always have the advantage because you're just going to be wider and bigger. In bodybuilding, a lot of it is about width, and just overall size, right? So, yeah, I mean, it might be a shorter curve for the smaller guys to get that look, but if a bigger guy that's 6'6" is able to fill out that frame, a lot of times it'll just be overpowering to a smaller competitor.
Interesting.
So
I think what we're covering here is that what a lot of people don't think about when we just initially talked about, I'm going to maybe get into bodybuilding, let me get a coach, I'm 12 weeks out. This is the stuff they don't think about.
Yeah.
yeah.
And if, like, I beat this dead horse all the time, but if you hire a coach, don't hire them based off their looks or their achievements personally. Like, it doesn't matter what federation they're involved with if they're a pro card winner. Look at their clients. Like,
no, for sure.
and that's another thing. Like, you can go online. Like, I could go on Instagram and find all these jacked coaches, but where are their clients? Like, it's pictures of them when they were on stage all of the time, and then they might sprinkle a client in here or there. It's like, where are your clients?
Yeah.
So do your research, and if you get
I think
a meal
it's important
plan,
to have both.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
You've got to have, I think it's so important for a coach to practice what they preach.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But do they practice what they preach? And then all of the other people that they coach, do they also have that, level of success and return on investment with that coach?
And a lot, like, early on in my career, the first show I did on my own, the second show I did on my own, then I hired a couple coaches. And I was just as ignorant as I get upset about with people today who are doing the same thing that I did because I made those mistakes. I hired a coach because they won a show and they look good. And guess what I got? A meal plan. I can say with confidence that Eric doesn't provide meal plans. Cliff doesn't. Peter does. Like, none of the top level coaches provide meal plans. Think about the context of what goes behind providing a meal plan to a client. If you're actually providing something they want, it's going to take you more time and effort, and they're going to charge you an arm and a leg to create a meal plan.
Creating meal plans is a pain in the ass.
Yeah. No, I can't even imagine.
And so here's the thing, and I will, for people that request it, I will provide a very basic outline.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I will provide like meal timing recommendations, like, roughly this amount of grams of each macro at these particular times. And then if they're like, well, how do I do that? Which, I don't have a whole lot of those people anymore, but if they do ask, then I'll give them a very basic, like, okay, what I would do in this scenario is maybe do, rice and, ground beef or rice and chicken or whatever. Like, but you have got to learn how to exchange things and how to fit your nutrition into your lifestyle to an extent,
and then
keep
I think
yourself
that's where you're
healthy.
getting at. That's where the good coaches will help you.
Yeah, you have to learn how to fish. Like, and I think the idea of, like, here's a meal plan, there's no thought process behind, okay, I have to eat this. But what does it teach you?
Yeah. The real art of coaching, like, to be the best coach, if you were to narrow it down to like the best coaches, the best coaches are the best educators. You know what I mean?
I made a post about this the other day where if
See?
you're
Great minds think alike.
Exactly. And I talked about like a lot of people on social media want to be entertained. They don't want to be educated. Like I make like a 6-minute video. People watch it. They don't like it. And I don't care about likes. I have 500 followers. That doesn't matter to me. The information that I provide on there, I think has been very valuable. And, you know, it may not, some of you, you know, watching it because you already know those things, but people want to be entertained. They want to scroll. They want to look at the picture, click like, whatever. But, you know, you need to learn how to thrive. You need to learn, you know, fish for yourself, create meal plan, like your own menu for yourself. So, yeah, I would absolutely agree with you 100%.
Nice. Yeah. And that's the biggest part of like, you know, you like having a good experience, you know, with a coach is, you know, learning those tools from them to be successful, like without the coach, you know, a lot of coaches that are bad coaches, I feel like they don't have answers to questions. You know, they're just like, oh, this is just what we do.
Yep.
You know,
my way or the highway.
My way or the highway. Like, this is just what you have to do to, you know, be successful. Or they just don't provide any answers, any depth to what they're doing, you know, which is totally wrong. You know, you need to be educated. Things need to be explained. And, you know, that's what's going to really build a strong clientele, a strong business, is being able to, you know, be that continuous resource for people. Right. You know, even if it's somebody like, you know, if I'm working with Paul, you know, obviously he knows how to train. He trains people. He knows how to eat. You know, he knows all of these things, right? But what value can I provide him that's going to help him be successful, right? At that level. So, you know, in working with, I train a ton of people who are coaches themselves, but, you know, a lot of them, you know, remain clients of mine because they still get value and they're still learning from me, right? Yeah. And that's the key, is keeping people, you know, to where you can provide that constant value. And it's not like you try and hold things back as a coach. I want to teach everybody everything I know all at once. Right. But the problem is that's them drinking through a fire hose of my 20 years of doing stuff, you know. And because I will count the first 5 years before I, you know, really got into working out and training and stuff like that is, you know, experience that I can use still, you know. Sure. So, you know, I can't shove all of that information and everything I learned competing, everything I learned from undergrad, master's degree, you know, my own research, you know, what I've learned in coaching different clients and just learning. You can't possibly shove all that information down people's throat, even in 5 years. Like, it's not possible. Sure. You know?
Well, it's almost like, because there's two things that would happen. They will just straight up forget because there's so much to try to retain. Right. Then also what they do retain will get kind of maybe miscued. And then you could have some serious problems where they think they're doing something right, where it's completely wrong. And like, oh, you told me to do this. No, I didn't. I told you to do it this way. You know, that kind of stuff. So it's almost damaging that way. So you're just looking out for them at that point.
Well, yeah, you can't shove too much information down people's throats. So it's like, you know, sparking that curiosity, giving them the tidbits that they need in order to learn and be successful in that one area.
And they learn it for themselves.
Right.
Yeah. And then, you know, move on.
And the cool part is, like, as a coach, you have to be dynamic. Because I can say with confidence, Eric, like, you don't have, all your clients don't have the same subset of education or training experience. So you have to constantly switch hats, as a coach. So it can't be a cookie cutter program, because what you gave me for training protocols for what you wanted me to accomplish is not the same thing you're going to give to somebody else. And same thing with nutrition. And, you know, so that's something you got to keep in mind. If you're a coach, you have to be dynamic, because each client need is going to be completely different. Yeah. So you might have some overlap, but the message and the dialogue between some of your clients.
Well, and you're educating at different levels too.
Exactly.
People's level of understanding is, you know, we don't have, you know, 100 Pauls running around that, like, this is what they do, this is their life, right? I mean, that's most people, that's not the case. So you have to, you know, and we kind of talked about this in the last episode with Russell a little bit, but, you know, you have to know your audience, and you have to be able to give your information in a palatable way.
Yeah.
And educate people to their education level and be able to explain things at a foundational level and then get into explaining things at a very technical level.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
difficult.
And some, like, for some of my clients, I have some very, very educated clients with, from doctors to PhDs, masters, different fields. And some of my clients check in and they literally have a dissertation. They have like 2 pages they sent me. And then I have some clients that just send me, their like a check-in sheet with a couple things, which both are fine. Some of them are a little bit more well-oiled. They don't need quite as much guidance, but they're still learning. They still ask questions. And then some of them, like, I need to sit down for 20 minutes to really digest what the thought process is behind this person's questions. Because I tell people, ask me. If I don't know, I'm going to tell you, but I'll do my best to find out a tangible takeaway. So everybody's different. But the cool part about that is it helps me become better as a coach.
Absolutely.
Like, and that's my goal, is I want to continually be better. Looking back at my training protocols and things 5 years ago, I'm face palming because it's like, and not because they were quote unquote bad 5 years ago. It's just because it's evolved so much. And so, I deal very, I dip my hands in contest prep a little bit. And there's reasons behind that. I am interested in it, but honestly, 95% of my clients are general pop, and I love working with general population for a variety of reasons. Teaching people how to eat correctly, debunking myths, and just improving, people's physical and emotional relationship with maybe the gym, their current environment, managing stress, GI issues. Like I have a handful of clients who have just this kaleidoscope of issues, and we try to sift through it.
Isn't that the kaleidoscope of issues?
Yeah, and it's like, that's not a bad thing. Like, you have to understand as a coach, like, when a client can be vulnerable with you in an email, like, that shows trust. And
absolutely,
and
you kind of want that.
Yeah,
because if you don't know that stuff, you can't help them to the best of your ability.
Right.
So you mentioned myths. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So what are some of your, like, pet peeve, like, myths about nutrition or training, coaching, things like that?
So I think first and foremost, this is the one I want to get out on the table because I've been thinking about this for the past week, is just because you're lean, you have to be lean to be in shape. Like, you have to be shredded to be in shape. And I think there's a lot of an emotional connection to that perception because of access to information online. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, don't get me wrong, being shredded is fun, but being stage lean,
let's be honest,
it's fun for a short period of time, right?
It's fun to look at yourself in the mirror.
Right. But
it's fun to see the ROI on everything that you've done.
Exactly. Sure. And so before I get into that, like, bodybuilding has been a metaphor for my life. It's taught me hard work, work ethic, discipline, evaluation. You have to look back at what you've done.
Yeah, Eric preaches that.
And I learned a lot of this stuff from Eric. Like, the reason I have a coach is to help myself improve personally, but professionally. So just think like Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, they all had coaches. There's no shame in having a coach. And so, but going back to you have to be shredded to be in shape, or for people to take you, necessarily seriously. I do think, you have to practice what you preach, but there's this, if you have a social media account and you're following people that make you feel worse about yourself because they're constantly making you question if you're worthy enough because you don't have a certain body fat percentage or don't look a certain way, stop following them. Like, mental health, your thoughts will undoubtedly become your actions.
Oh, absolutely.
And that might mean some of you listening unfollow me, and that's great. If it helps you become better, fine. But that is such a fallacy, and I think there's a huge emotional connection.
Oh, totally.
And I think it's for the wrong reasons. It's to sell people a quick fix.
There you go.
For sure.
Create confusion and sell them a quick fix. And so that's one of my biggest pet peeves.
Create confusion. That's like a world problem, and especially in the industry. Just like you said, I really appreciate you saying that, because it is. It's to create confusion.
Yeah. And it's, never doubt the path you're going on. And I preach this a lot to my clients that are like, oh, I want to look like this. Why don't you focus on where you're going and not what somebody else is, what somebody else is doing? And, newsflash, losing 20 pounds and keeping that fat loss forever, abstaining from gaining that 20 pounds back is far superior than anything else you could do. So
absolutely,
what good is losing 20 pounds if you gain 30 back? And that happens all the time.
The unsustainable approaches, I'd say that goes kind of right along with what you're saying. Is definitely a huge pet peeve of mine. People taking unsustainable approaches. They don't think long term. It drives me nuts how people are so short-sighted and they only see, right in front of their face. They only see one step ahead. Like, even with prep, like, look at what you're doing and what that's going to do to you 5, 10, 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So sustainability and you don't have to be, totally shredded, like especially to be working towards your health. Like, stop focusing so much on just having abs and start focusing on the process.
Right. Lift weights and learn how to eat well, and
the abs will be a side effect.
Yeah. Manage your stress and get adequate sleep. And those are two variables that I think are just being driven into the ground right now, which for a good reason.
That keeps getting brought up in this podcast too, a theme kind of through that.
Yeah. So those are, that's obviously unique to the individual, but if you're following me on Instagram, Coach Paulie, I have a few posts about clients, and asking, what's the difference between these two pictures in terms of weight? And there's like 2 of them that the weight is the same, but the body composition change is completely different.
Wildly different. Yeah. Quit focusing on the scale.
Yeah. The scale is a tool, and the scale is usually a tool that the coach can use to gauge different things. But to kind of get back to the myth, so like thinking you have to be, lean to be happy. You're like, if you weren't happy before, you're not going to be happy after losing that weight. If you go for a hike 10 miles in the woods, you have to fucking hike 10 miles out. So if you have a lifetime of poor behaviors or relationships with food, you have to address those
Absolutely.
for a long period of time before you can begin to get that return on investment. And just because you're not seeing it immediately doesn't mean
it's not doing anything.
10 years down the road, you're not going to see anything. Think about retirement. People think, 15%. Oh, what good is that going to do me? Or, $500 a month into an IRA. Well, 30 years from now, that's going to be millions of dollars. Like, you have to think long term.
Yes.
This isn't a short term fix. And so when I work with clients, they all fill out an application, and I'm constantly changing it because I think it can get better at screening people to see if they're truly ready for the process.
Absolutely.
And one of the questions in there is if they've worked with a coach before. I don't need to know their name because that's irrelevant, but I need to know like what dieting approaches they've taken before.
Right.
And undoubtedly, no fruit because it has sugar. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I have never met a person who has become overweight because they ate a fucking banana. Like, seriously, that doesn't happen.
You don't get overweight because you've eaten too many bananas. I mean, people are not eating, 50 bananas in a day. They're eating 50 cupcakes. Let's get real.
Yeah, and you made a comment on my post. It was like this. It was kind of like a snacking adds up.
Oh yeah.
And I added like lick of the spatula, handful of chips during dinner.
Oh yeah.
Costco days, and it had like 450 calories. And Eric's like, who the hell eats 450 calories at Costco during their sample days? It's like, obviously we eat more than that.
Yeah.
Right? so
only 450. That's weak.
That's
man.
like that's like
2 stations.
Yeah, 2 stations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's those little habitual things that we don't even think about that add up over time. And so, fruit is good for you. Like it's
And let's clarify here. So for those of you that don't know, like fructose, is completely different than what you're going to get out of table sugar, right? Process is completely different in your body. It's a 2 glucose molecule, right? It's it doesn't affect blood sugar the same. It's a totally different type of sugar. Like, it's not the same.
Right.
And so when you say like, oh, fruit has sugar, like, well, it's not the same. Like from the foundational level, like the chemistry of how it's broken down in your body and all the effects it has, totally different. And carbs are not bad.
No. And
carbs are not bad. Wake up call.
Yeah. And every time you say carbs are bad, God kills a kitten.
That's true.
And so
that's true. I full-heartedly believe that.
And for those of you who don't like cats, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But,
keep saying it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
A puppy.
But oh gosh.
But we look at
Cross the line, Eric. Cross the line.
Too soon.
Too soon.
So like for instance, like Eric was mentioning, it's broken down completely different. But we're also we're looking at one lens of what fruit contains, we totally are dismissing the phytochemicals, the vitamins and minerals that are in and fiber. Oh my gosh. So you have to look at the whole
If
the
a
whole
coach,
picture.
let's just get this on the table and off my chest right now. If somebody tells you to not eat fruit in order to lose weight or to become more healthy, you can basically just completely discredit them for anything else they'll ever tell you ever.
Yep. And on that same token, and this is another peeve of mine in the fitness industry, is eating past a certain time.
Right.
Like in the context of weight loss, we'll even say fat loss, because they're two kind of completely different things, right?
Right.
When calories are equated for and you're in a deficit and you're optimizing protein for your specific needs, assuming they're correct, as long as you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. If you're not losing weight, you are not in a calorie deficit. And
Period.
that's the law. Like,
Period.
It's the law.
it's not up for debate. It's not up for discussion. And so going back to the eating past like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Now, for some people, that's beneficial because they notice they tend to snack heavily in the evening on maybe more of the highly processed, hyper-palatable foods. Wonderful. Don't eat past 7 if that's sustainable for you.
Right.
But a banana at 8:01 is still, assuming it's 100 grams of banana, 22 carbs, maybe 100 calories, 80 to 100 calories. It's still 100 freaking calories at 7:59. It doesn't change the caloric value of the food.
And
Past
even when
8
you're
it
getting,
doubles.
like, if you're getting into the super specifics of that, right? Like the meal timing, what nutrients to have when, and things like that. Like, yes, don't have a humongous meal before you go to bed, because that's going to disrupt your sleep cycle more than anything, and you're not going to process that well. But having a small meal prior to bed can actually help you regulate your blood sugar levels at night, which is actually going to help fat loss, actually going to get you in a better sleeping pattern. So it's, the devil is always in the details. So, if you want to get really specific, eating a small amount of carbs at night, like right before you go to bed, essentially, can be beneficial. It's just totally person to person. But like you mentioned, the eating late thing for people, a lot of times late at night, what are people doing? They're going in their pantry, they're looking around, like, oh, I'm kind of like, they get that
snacky
sweet tooth. That's like the sugar hour, right? You're like,
good. It hits me harder than a freight train. I'm gonna be honest with you.
And people are going in their pantry and grabbing a couple Oreos out. You know what I mean? And does that get tracked? Who knows? Are those people even tracking? You know what I mean? Like, are you really equating calories at that point?
Right.
Right.
Well, then you're tired at that point, and that can just kind of throw you off.
Yeah.
Because during the day you're like, I'm not gonna have those like 2 Oreos because it doesn't fit, and then you get tired and you're like, oh, it doesn't fit.
And that's just it. You're tired. You're not hungry. Go to bed. Brush your teeth. Go to bed.
I saw this thing. It was just like if it was something about the fact where it's just like, if you want to lose weight, like, go to bed or something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just
Exactly.
you're not hungry. You want to
Right.
go. Well, it's funny with my kids. Like they're starting to do this thing where we're like, okay, like we're gonna go to bed here soon or whatever, and there's just like, oh, I'm hungry. And there's like, I'm hungry. It's
Well,
like,
they
it's almost
know
an
that
excuse.
they'll get to stay up.
They'll
a
get to
little
stay
bit
up
later.
late,
Yep.
right? But
You're
it
not
also
hungry.
like it
Go
just
to
made me
sleep.
think about that in my head. I'm just like, because I'm thinking, no, you're not really hungry. You just don't want to go to bed. And then in my mind, I'm like, wait, am I the same way?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We all. I think we all kind of like. I'll be the first to say that. I'm a coach, but I struggle with the same things that I talk to my clients about. And sometimes it's
everybody
actually,
does.
sometimes it's therapy to me. Like, I'm writing to a client, I'm like, am I writing to myself? like seriously.
Does it say my name on top
Yeah,
of
like-
that form?
Did I CC myself in on this email? Because I seriously need to read this
Yeah.
or take it in for myself. But
Yeah.
I think it's a sign of a good coach as well, though, because you
Yeah.
realize that, okay, and then it helps you practice what you preach.
Oh,
right.
for sure.
And 2 things that have been really helpful for me are, number 1, out of sight, out of mind. Like, I used to think that was a bunch of crap, right? But during contest prep, or like, even if it's not contest prep, it's a general fat loss phase for me. Like, I keep stuff in the entryway closet in the pantry up above, and I forget about it. And I think we've got like 18 boxes of cereal in there right now. Cereal is the one thing that I can't really have in the house in one of the main cupboards, because I'll eat the whole box in 2 days.
Oh, dude, it's easy.
I am a big fan
Yeah.
of cereal.
And then-
I got the same problem.
Yeah, and then along those same lines, it's like, it's people will say it's not healthy to restrict, and I agree, it's not healthy to restrict. But if there are certain trigger foods that keep you from achieving your goal for whatever reason, keeping them out of the house, that's intelligent. Like, don't bring them
yeah.
into the house,
Oh yeah.
right?
Well, if you don't want something bad in your home, you keep it out of your home.
Yeah, I mean, if there's not any Oreos in your house, you're not going to eat them. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
And
I keep using the Oreo analogy, but I mean, it's
someone
true.
wants Oreos today.
I mean,
And for
They're
some
on
of
my
you,
mind.
like, you know, Eric, you know, I don't know how far it is to the grocery store, but for me, like, there ain't any way in hell I'm going at 10 o'clock in the morning, or in the evening, excuse me, driving into town to buy, or like, I live on a mountain, you know.
There's a benefit of living in a
Bro,
mountain.
So-
I could walk to Fred Meyer from my house. So.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not, yeah, so
Stones throw away from a good Oreo
Yeah.
right there.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's human behavior is so interesting, and that's why I love working with the general population, because I can teach people to permanently lose, you know,
the
5 to
psychology
7%
of it, right.
of their body weight,
Oh,
primarily body fat, and keep it off permanently.
Yeah.
Like I made a post about this. Like, you will see some of the most dramatic transformations online, and I'm not discrediting those. I think they take a lot of work. Now, this is contest prep aside, because that's a different subset of athletes. We all know going into contest prep that's not sustainable. It's for us, you know, 5 minutes on stage.
Yeah.
We understand that.
Let's just get that off the table as well. Like, the end stage is the last 10 pounds that you lose in contest prep. Not sustainable at all.
No.
You go into contest prep knowing full well the behaviors that you're having that last little bit of contest prep are not sustainable, and you should not sustain them.
And you,
Correct.
So you're saying you should have that expectation.
Yes, absolutely.
Because then when you come out of it,
but
that
the
depression
majority
might not
of
happen.
prep, well, I mean, that's a different topic, but the
okay.
majority of prep, you are still exercising these healthy behaviors.
Yeah.
It's just that last little bit that you go into knowing to get to that. It's not sustainable, because guess what? You should not live, back to what you said, you don't have to be shredded. You should not live, 5-10 pounds outside of what you are on stage. I mean, and that's assuming that you are lean enough on stage, which that's a whole nother topic. That's very rarely achieved, actually, for like the most people that compete. And here we are talking about like the level has come up so far, but yet still at local level competitions, I would say and I've judged shows, the one common critique is you should be leaner. You should be leaner. You should be leaner. And it's because it's very, very difficult. But anyway, that's a tangent. But
No, and so that's kind of something I really want to drive home to people is, you'll see these dramatic transformations online, and where are they at 2 years? Post that client in 2 years.
Yep.
I can with confidence, and that's because I work with general population, 95% of my clients, the ones that stick with me and learn, proper behaviors and manage stress, sleep, all those kinds of things, they're maintaining that weight loss. They may not look shredded, but they're killing life. They're enjoying,
Yeah.
Well,
and
they're still looking good.
Yeah.
they look phenomenal, and they feel great about themselves.
Well, just look at the turnover with a lot of the not so great coaches out there that don't take the right approaches.
Correct.
It's funny. They have a turnover. It's like every 2 years, everybody's a new client.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then when they do have these, 1 or 2 clients that are successful, mostly because of genetics, those clients, like, where are they in 3 years?
Yeah.
Like, they're not with that coach anymore. They either stop competing or they find an alternative because they can't do it anymore, Whereas, I'm sure Paul can say the same thing, but like, we bring Corey up. I think I've been coaching Corey since 2012.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so we're going on 9 years
Wow.
of coaching here. And I mean, she's a top level pro.
Yeah.
Top level. Like, she
Absolutely
could very
lights out.
well win worlds, and she will at one point, I guarantee you.
Absolutely.
I will call it right now. COAG will win IPF or not IPF, IPE worlds.
Yeah. I would
At
agree
one
with
point, or WNBF worlds at one point. She will. It will happen.
On the record.
That is on the record.
June 19th,
She will win
2021.
worlds
Small
at
and
one
mighty.
point. That's right.
Oh my goodness.
Even
that's
at
exciting.
even at 100 pounds.
Oh, I wasn't going to say that, but you done gone there now.
Oh,
You're going
yeah.
to get some hate mail from her. And I'm
Oh
just kidding.
yeah.
But so like prep, like the prepping process and a general fat loss process are usually the same.
Very
the
similar.
difference is that last 10 pounds or maybe 15 pounds.
It's when you stop, really.
It's when you start. Do you start going to extremes? Do you not start going to extremes? Like, that's the difference. So stop comparing yourself to these dramatic transformations online, and quit focusing on nuance. Like,
Oh yeah.
Eric and I, and I'm sure you as well, we can all sit here and talk about how nuance matters, and it does. But for the majority of the population looking to maintain fat loss, you need to focus on sleep, reducing stress in areas that you can. For some of you, that might mean quitting your job and finding something else, optimizing your calorie intake and managing protein intake, and just participate in strength training. Lift weights. Quit doing HIIT every freaking day of the week.
Yep.
And
under the bar.
Yeah, it's crazy. And steps. So that's another thing I'd like to talk about. Neat. And I made a post about this in the total daily energy expenditure post the other day. And that's one of the biggest things that's, I think, evolved from when I started competing to now. And that's applicable to general population. And this is something I see on the majority of applications. What type of training protocols? It's either HIIT or cardio, death march cardio, fasted cardio, like just like these unrealistic and approaches that really don't make sense. So if you think about it, like, okay, let's say you go do cardio for 45 minutes, like structured cardio, and there can be a time and place for cardiovascular work. I'm not discounting the benefits of that. However, that's like not even 4% of your day.
Oh yeah.
So your cardiovascular machine, or even your smart device, might tell you you're expending X amount of calories. That's probably off by at least 50%.
Oh yeah.
Right. So if we, and you probably could do this in exercise phys lab, the amount of energy you expend with 45 minutes of cardio is far less superior than the amount of energy you're going to expend hitting 15,000 or 10,000 steps a day, which, by the way, you can do by parking further away from the grocery store, or taking the stairs, or going for a walk a few times throughout the day, taking breaks.
People totally don't realize how much just tracking steps and general activity will do for you. I mean, you take somebody who's got a desk job, right? A lot of people with desk jobs have issues with, maintaining or, just general body composition maintenance. I mean, doing a desk job is like a recipe for gaining weight if you're not exercising because your body was meant to move. So not only will you start to gain weight, you'll get, joint problems, back problems, muscle imbalances, things like that. But, anyway, if you were to compare, your calorie burn just sitting at a desk all day compared to if you just took 3 10-minute walks, or, get up and break that up and just take some steps throughout the day. I mean, the energy expenditure is enough to lose a pound of body fat a week. Yep. And that's, consistency that anybody can do. It is literally walking. Yeah. You don't have to sit there and beat your head against a treadmill. You don't have to, do HIIT training for 2 hours a day. You don't have to do, CrossFit. You don't have to do any of these extreme types of things. You just have to move, and like in the form of walking. And then of course there is, like you said, a place for, rigorous activity. We all also need rigorous activity, but yeah, I mean, you can't, and we talk about this all the time too, you cannot argue against the fact that resistance training, like a good, solid resistance training program, is the best thing that you can do for your health, for sure.
And that's where, like, the HIIT, that's kind of where it bothers me about the HIIT training is. HIIT is, any sort of exercise is a stress on your body. Walking, it's, I would say, little to no stress and takes no time to recover from.
Right.
So when you go to the gym, you're breaking down your muscles. You're not really preserving them. That takes place, the rebuild and recovery, when you're sleeping and managing your stress, right? So, but the thing we also don't think about is our muscles recover quicker than our ligaments and tendons because they're more vascular. We have more blood flow, so they're going to recover more nutrients, right? So when I see these applications that come in, I'm doing HIIT 4 days a week, and they're not losing weight, part of that's probably due to caloric value, but there's like so many other variables that are in there. Their body may not be recovering. Their subsequent workouts are worse.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you were talking last night, we were talking about when you did a bunch of HIIT for a contest prep.
Oh man.
And it's like,
it worked, but I would never do it again.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you do all of this intense training, intense cardio. Well, how intense can your lifts possibly be if you're just drained from doing HIIT?
Right.
Like, that's no way, Jose. You know what I mean?
Yep.
No way, Jose.
And like your objective, I think a general consensus is your objective going to the gym is to improve yourself, right? So how can you improve yourself if you're not recovering, not fueling yourself adequately? Most of my women clients that are general population, we're feeding them more food now than we were when we started.
Oh, absolutely.
And they are completely different human beings. Like I work
Absolutely.
with quite a few ultra athletes, which is just like I thought
That's
bodybuilders
fun.
had an issue with their thought process.
Oh, dude.
And I'm just like, to go run 100 miles in the mountains is just, that's incredible. Like
Oh, dude.
that's not a dietary, that's a mental strength right
Oh,
there. And
yeah.
I admire
Unreal, yeah.
those athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my gals, Megan Dehan, if you're listening, good luck this weekend in your ultra. Ultra. It's
Damn.
crazy.
So badass, yeah.
But going back to the steps, so I was at a powerlifting meet last weekend helping out as a spotter, and this is where
Now that's some cardio.
oh my gosh, I caught a kid deadlifting. He's like 130 pounds. He pulled like 350.
Nice.
And then on his third attempt, I caught him, and had I not been there, he would have been more injured than he was. But you know,
Oh, man.
it was fortunately
Speedy recovery, pal.
Yeah. I don't want to mention his name because I don't think he's a minor, so I won't say his name. But hopefully he recovers quickly. So, what I'm getting at is our perception of our activity through the day can be influenced by our psychological or mental fatigue. And so, I was at this powerlifting meet for 9 hours. My brain was exhausted. I was physically tired. I looked at my step count. I didn't even hit 8,000 steps that day. So when people tell me that they're really active, like, oh, I do this, I do laundry, this, track your steps. I want to see what your steps are. And undoubtedly, they always come back. And it's not that it's bad that they're at 5,000 or 6,000, but that's their data point. Like, okay, this is where you're at. You thought you were here, but this is where you actually are. So our perception versus reality, I think, is quite a bit different.
Yeah. And it is talked about all the time, and that nutritionally as well. Just it's the tracking.
Yeah, it's the balance.
And that's what
yes,
Eric
for sure.
hits me all the time. It's Hunter, you're tracking. Yeah. He's fixing me, and I love him for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it, like collecting data points, right? And, you know, we're big on like, I double up. I wear an Oura ring, track my sleep and activity with that. And then I am a nerd. And then I also wear an Apple Watch, track my, you know, exercise and activity and daytime stuff with my Apple Watch, because it's collecting data. And then, you know, we're coming out with an app that basically allows us to digest all of that info all in one place, along with nutrition and things like that. It's very powerful tools because then you can correlate everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can really see what's going on physiologically based off of everything that's been objectively tracked. Not just I feel this way,
Correct.
but this is what has actually occurred. So you can see, you know, differences day to day, and then you can start to fine tune your nutrition accordingly. Somebody, you know, like Paul or one of us here at the Mecca that's, you know, very experienced and knowledgeable with nutrition can really help you balance that nutritional intake, you know, in accordance with your activity level, or we can help you modify your activity level. You know, there's a ton of different factors, but tracking everything and knowing, you've got to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I don't want to necessarily say this is a lie in the fitness industry because I know that's kind of the topics we're talking about, but intuitive eating.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Let's talk about intuitive eating.
That's a fucking joke. Like,
100%.
And why I think it's a joke is because most dietitians can't estimate a serving of peanut butter correctly without using a scale. Like, I've tested dietitians on this and they fail miserably, which is fine. Like, you know, I think, like I said, there's a psychological component. Like we see what we want to see, right? Yep. And so this intuitive eating, much of our decisions around food, and I'm picking on females because I see it all the time, and I work with clients all the time.
Men are just as guilty, but
they are. Most of my clients are females. That's why I'm picking on them. But all of them are doing really well. I love all of you. Thank you so much for supporting me and working with me. But intuitive eating, it's like this emotion, like how we're feeling in the moment, and let's eat that food. Like, really? Like, I've never had success with intuitive eating.
So, yeah, and I had a client a couple weeks ago who lives out of town, and she's a phenomenal athlete. And then she's also going to be stepping on stage at some point in the, you know, next year or so. But, you know, she's been tracking. She's been doing really well. And we've been fine-tuning her nutrition for some outdoor activities that she does, as well as her lifting and things like that. And she shot me an email a few weeks ago, and she's like, hey, I just, you know, I'm doing really well, but I was just thinking, like, man, I'd really like to, you know, I feel like I want to intuitive eat a little bit and, like, kind of get away from tracking just to give myself a break and things like that. And to clarify, that's okay at times.
Correct.
at times. But for her right now, we're really we're kind of in a mini cut, trying to reduce body fat levels. But actually now, at the time, we had started upregulating her to where we were trying to just increase her capacity and really find where maintenance was for her now.
Sure.
And she's like, yeah, I want to intuitive eat. And I'm like, man, this is A, not the right time, but B, your body is not an accurate gauge. Your mind is not an accurate gauge of determining what you need. People are like, oh, well, my body, wants this, and so I think that's what I should do. If that's the case, I'd be 400 freaking pounds, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
The Oreos would be in your butt.
yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, your mind is like, you can't control it. I mean, you can control it, but those cravings and things like that, they are there for survival.
Right.
They are not there to optimize your body composition and optimize your performance and do all of the things that we're trying to do with, especially this in particular individual. So yeah, you cannot intuitive eat like that in that stage. Now, if you're talking like off season, you're at a set point, you're kind of, in a maintenance quote unquote phase. Yeah, sure. Intuitive eat, like, I loosely kind of keep tabs. Even Paul, you're kind of there right now, but it's not like you don't give a shit.
Right.
You still probably, I guarantee you probably ballpark calories and you probably ballpark protein every day.
Yeah. Protein's priority. Like every meal, what protein or snack, what protein source am I going to use? And I make sure it's a minimum of 30 grams.
Yep.
And I'm pretty good at gauging my hunger. Like, but if I had to do like a contest prep without tracking, good luck, it wouldn't happen. And the other thing that you're talking about with so for the majority of the population, I'm confident that we're sleep deprived, right?
Oh,
so when you're sleep deprived, guess what? 2 hormones get influenced: leptin and ghrelin.
Oh yeah.
2 extremely important factors that you can't manipulate or trick. So when you're trying to intuitive eat, when those 2 hormones are not functioning correctly, guess what happens? You're not going to be making good decisions, right?
Yeah.
So intuitive eating is eating what you feel like you want to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, I feel like I need to eat this much or that much, or like, I feel like I should. I mean,
So it's different than gauging, like, understanding your body. It's different than that.
well, it's kind of a gray area in terms of that. Like, I typically, I'll tell people, the blanket statement, like, you should eat the foods that make you feel good, right?
Sure.
And what that means is the foods that you're eating aren't giving you digestive issues.
Correct.
You're not getting bloated. You're not getting the shits. You're not, you know what I mean? Things like that. You shouldn't be eating foods that you feel like you have huge blood sugar spikes with. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you eat a particular food and you feel like you get really tired afterwards, and like for me, it's potatoes. If I eat potatoes, whew, man, that's what I should carb load on, because hot dog, I am through the moon with potatoes. Like, for whatever reason, just my physiology, right? And we're talking typically like a russet or a red potato, which do have pretty high glycemic index, so it makes sense. And a lot of people say, oh, white rice. Well, white rice doesn't do that to me the same way. It's funny, we had Gethin on here a few episodes back, and he said the same thing. He actually wore a glucometer, and he tested the influence of different foods on his blood sugar levels. And he didn't spike with white rice either. And I know that about myself, just trial and error. I've been doing it, testing things out long enough, and amounts as well. Like, I kind of know roughly where my limit is. Like, if I'm getting over 120 grams of carbs in a meal, unless I'm trying to carb load for something in particular, that's a little bit more than I typically like to do. I'll balance out with fats a little bit more. So
Right. And that's another thing. Like, I don't want to go too deep into intuitive eating, because I don't think there's I think if you asked 10 different people, they give you 10 different definitions of what intuitive eating. So I think that, like you said, there's a gray area, right?
Okay.
But I think there's this desire to have this perfect macronutrient ratio, right? And for the majority of people, control your protein, distribute carbs and fats how you'd like. Now, if you're a competitive athlete, I think it's important to make sure that you're optimizing your fat intake.
Yeah, there's some added nuance there.
Yeah, but you're at the competitive level. For general population,
energy balance.
That's it. So, think about dieting. It's a stress. Whether you are in a huge caloric deficit because you're 13, 14 weeks into a 20-week prep, or you're 4 weeks into a fat loss phase for general, health reasons, it's an added stress. So you want it to be as least stressful or less amount of stress as possible. So it gives you that freedom and flexibility to adapt your meals a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want a little bit more fat, a little less carb this meal, but my protein needs to stay the same.
Now that's proper intuitively eating, I would say.
Correct.
But intuitively eating, should not, and that's, I totally get behind that. But people that just don't, I feel like intuitive eating is simply a way for people to justify laziness. I'm going to be totally frank about this.
There you go.
You're justifying laziness by not wanting to track and just wanting to take a break.
Correct.
And like I said, there's a time and a place for that. Like in the past 7 years since I've gotten on stage, I've gone through phases of very strictly tracking and phases of less strictly tracking. Like, that's normal. That's fine. You can live a healthy lifestyle, but don't get it twisted. Don't try and trick yourself and, I'm going to intuitive eat because I just feel a certain way. Your feelings are irrelevant because, like Paul said, your leptin and ghrelin levels and other hormones that might dictate hunger levels, or, stress dictates hunger. Like, you want to stress eat. So are you telling me that you should intuitive eat and you're stressed and so you just want to snack and eat pizza and Oreos and you're hungry? Like, do you think intuitively, since you're feeling like you should eat those things, should you do it? No. And that's just going to make you feel worse because guess what? Eating all that crap is going to have a ripple effect on everything
Correct.
else. Sleep being a huge one. So you're probably already sleep deprived. You eat crap. It wrecks your sleep even more. And it's funny because I've collected all this data on myself now with the Oura Ring because I've been strictly tracking my sleep. And I've tested out like a bajillion different things now on myself. And I will tell you, the one thing that wrecks my sleep more than anything is if I eat bad. Because I intentionally ate bad for a day to see what would impact it would have on my sleep. And granted, I factored that all in with where I should calorically be in the week so that it didn't affect my composition because I can. But but regardless, my sleep that night, my average heart rate was extremely elevated. My restlessness was.
That's how you get so lean.
Yeah.
Cardio while you sleep.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's
we
a
figured
selling
it out. Yes! We figured it out.
Hot damn.
Elevated resting heart rate. Elevated heart rate at night while you're sleeping. Increase in restlessness, like you move around more, your sleep cycle's disrupted, and your heart rate variability goes down into the trash. Like literally, it is like you can see it on, you can see the data, you can see it right there, and so it's like, oh, okay. Yep. So imagine if you did that every day. Yeah. Your sleep just gets worse over time.
Compounds probably.
And to clarify, when you say you eat bad, like a bunch of hyper palatable, like highly caloric foods, right? High fat, high carbohydrate type of stuff.
Yeah, so we're talking, I purposefully ate like fried foods. Yeah. I purposefully ate really rich, like, I did steak. It was still semi-healthy, I will say, because I did a lot of steak, a lot of salmon, and then there was just like a lot of breads with butter, and there was a lot of potatoes, and there was pie, and some fried stuff.
It was definitely
things like
way
that.
different than what you were doing at that point. It was just, you forced your body to be different. Yeah.
And then at a separate occasion, I drank a small amount of alcohol. And let me tell you, that also jacks with it, because I like never drink, but I'm like, well, lab rat, here we go. Like, so that's the thing too. Like, when you train with me, don't you for a second think that I'm ever recommending anything that I haven't tried, or I'm telling you something that I have not experimented with, ever. Like, I am the lab rat.
And what's kind of fun, you said you drink. So when I have clients send their check-in pictures, I can tell if they've consumed a little bit more than above a modest amount of alcohol, because the edema and inflammation in their check-in photos.
Oh, yeah.
So that a lot of times I have conversations with clients that are uncomfortable to have on their end because I question them.
Oh, yeah.
We got to do it.
Yeah, and you can't. Your coach will find out. Like.
Oh, yeah, we know.
So we've been doing this too long.
So alcohol is going to wreck your sleep cycles too. So don't you for a second think that nightcap that's helping you go to bed is helping.
No.
it is not helping at all. Your sleep cycle is way more poor. And that's, I mean, one of the big reasons why I can probably count on one hand how many times I've drank in the past 2, 3, 4 years. You know what I mean? Like it's very few and far between. And the fact of the matter is, I just can very palpably feel and see through data tracking how big of a negative that is. So, you know, you got to balance that out. Like, yeah, you like to have a drink or two on the weekends. Well, you got to seriously think about, is that worth it, right? Like, could you, you know, either curtail that back a little bit? I mean, I've had people come to me and being like, oh, yeah, I'll casually down a fifth of tequila on a Saturday night. And I'm like, oh, boy. Like, that's, like, you almost couldn't do anything worse, really, for your health, you know. So,
or like 300 milligrams of caffeine at 7 at night when you're doing a workout and have to go to bed at 10. Like,
right.
that can
That's,
also.
yeah.
I did that once. I never.
So
done it
yeah,
again.
fun fact: the half-life of caffeine is about 6 hours, right? Isn't that right? The half-life of caffeine is about 6 hours. So you know, if you intake 300 milligrams of caffeine, even at 2 p.m. You're still, I mean, 8 p.m., you still have, 150 milligrams of caffeine being processed, right? So, I mean, you got to think about that. So, I always give my clients a kind of a limit on caffeine for the day, but also, don't consume caffeine within 8 hours at least of bed.
Right.
I try and cut it off like 10 hours before bed, quite frankly.
And that's one thing I've been doing a lot is I this morning I had a couple cups of coffee, but I usually have 1 cup every morning, before 10 o'clock. But the first thing I do when I get up is I pound a few glasses of water.
Oh, yeah.
My body's are dehydrated, from not, having any water source all evening and getting up and going to the bathroom middle of the night. So that helps me start my day. But a little homework assignment for all of you guys who are listening. Go look up ghrelin and leptin. Simple assignment. Go look up what those mean, how it impacts your body, because we did talk about today how, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit while controlling protein. But our behaviors influence the sustainability of that.
Right.
And our behaviors are influenced by our stress and sleep management. So we have to make sure that we're kind of, like I said, this is a kaleidoscope of different behaviors and lifestyle changes that we're trying to go through. So you have to understand how your other behaviors are impacting your ability to adhere to a calorie deficit or maintenance or surplus. Do we have, how much time we got?
We're good. Yeah, no, we got all day.
Tis a Saturday.
So
Tis a Saturday.
The next thing I want to talk about, and this is kind of off the cuff, how health products in the fitness industry are marketed. Like, and I'm not going to name any brands, but like protein bars. And I'm not saying that these are inherently like bad for you, but we have to look at a general population or even a contest prep person, right? If you're in a fat loss phase, you should probably be prioritizing whole foods, plant-based foods, lean proteins, healthy fats, things like that. Look at what you're getting for the value of that protein bar, right? And there a few things I want to point out is, number one, the taste sucks. I have been burned more times on buying a protein bar because it's like flavored peanut butter and jelly. And actually one of my gal clients, Jen, I know you're going to listen to this, so you'll get a kick out of this. She texted me like last week. She was going out of state, and she bought this peanut butter and jelly protein bar, and she texted me, this tastes like cough syrup. This is disgusting. I'm like, I didn't tell you to get that, So you kind of have to be aware that there's a risk to reward ratio, and the reason that the flavors generally don't add up is because there's a lot of added fiber, that's not necessarily naturally occurring, and then you have, sugar alcohols and things like that, which aren't necessarily bad for you, but for
Moderation.
Moderation. Like, if I eat a protein bar and I'm not pounding water, if I'm not hiking, I generally don't eat them. I do have them in the house, but I keep them for backpacking trips because, let's face
They're
it, like
convenient,
like
dense calories.
Right.
But when you're hiking, you also want dense calories.
Exactly.
On a normal day, you want, a good volume of food. You
Yeah.
want to be concentrating on the nutrient levels, things like that.
If you're working at a desk, eating trail mix in the middle of the day for a snack, a few handfuls of trail mix, like, what a serving is. It's an ounce. So a few handfuls is probably 6 to 1,000 calories, depending on the size of your hand, right?
Trail mix is reserved strictly for hunting season.
For the trail.
Oh, yeah.
Your ass needs to be on the trail. A Cliff Bar, like...
Well, it's named appropriately.
It is.
Yes, it is. Like the Cliff Bars, Delta Airlines was, was on the plane, yesterday obviously, and they're handing out Cliff Bars on the plane.
Yeah.
Because I think people
Who needs that? We're all sitting in a tube.
Hand out a thing of carrots and celery.
Yeah, seriously. Like, get rid of the strobe waffles and the Biscoffs, man. I mean,
Biscoffs are
ridiculous.
disgusting anyway.
Brett Hunter's like a Biscoff because he can't have peanut butter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair. That's a fair trade.
I gotta
okay.
compensate.
But yeah, I mean, dude. So on
Sun
the
butter.
topic of trail mix,
Sun butter.
Sun butter?
Sunflower seed butter.
I don't know if I've
It's
tried
peanut
that.
butter?
I've
Yeah.
tried every other butter that's not peanut butter. I don't know if I've tried that one though.
Yeah. One of
we'll
my
have the EpiPen ready.
one of my buddies, Hunter. He's allergic to peanuts, so that's what he.
Wait, his
would use.
name's Hunter?
Yeah, Hunter Paulie. Yeah.
Hunter.
Shout out Hunter. And
Shout out.
Unbelievable.
What's up, Hunter?
There we go.
yeah, but he's sun butter. I'm like, what's this? And just like 5 years ago, I tried it. Like, this is really good.
So
Well, I'm
what
gonna
the
have to write
best
that down.
thing in the world to me is hunting strictly only, because you need, like, you're processing at such a high rate doing a day of hiking. You basically just need straight sugar. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah. Your fuel source.
Trail mix and double stuffed Oreos.
Oh man.
So
Frosted animal crackers. I'm not helping you.
Oh.
oh dude.
Your mind will be.
But
blown.
if you mix, take a bite of trail mix, and we're talking like the Kirkland with the M&Ms and the peanuts and the raisins, get that all saucy in your mouth, and then an Oreo, dude, it's better than dipping Oreos in peanut butter. It is phenomenal. Don't do this unless you're like death hiking though. It is a recipe for gaining weight, but
Right.
yeah, no. I mean, I typically drop 10 pounds when I go and hike like that because I can't eat enough.
Right.
So, I mean, we kind of have to resort to, things that you normally wouldn't do, which is kind of interesting for, a day or two to eat super calorically dense foods and like get back to camp, have, things like pasta and cobbler. And it's funny. We always stop at this, shout out Volcanic Farms in Horseshoe Bend. They make phenomenal pies, and I'll pound an entire pie by myself in like 2 days when I'm hunting.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, you talk about like energy in, energy out, like, and that's the same thing with like when you look at like a Michael Phelps diet or something like that. Now, granted, you shouldn't be eating like just junk. You should try and eat as much quality, nutrient dense foods as possible. But I mean, it's hard to get enough calories in when you're burning 10,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's only so much you can do. So yeah, I mean, a huge focus on protein still, but yeah, like things like pie. Oh, dude.
And just like a disclaimer, when you're packing a 50-pound pack in the mountains and then potentially throwing a quarter or two of an elk on there, like that's a completely different ball game than lifting weights for an hour. So
oh, dude.
Again,
it's not equated, and it's not normal life that we do that.
Correct.
But on the flip side, you look at like all these cowboys that are going out and bucking hay in the fields and working. There's a reason why they get up and they eat bacon and a bunch of butter and like all these things, because like your caloric need is going to be very, very high, right? So, I mean, you don't need to be eating bacon and lots of butter if you're, driving your car 5 miles to your office and then sitting in your desk all day, right?
And working out afterwards.
Yeah, and that's like the whole keto kick. Every person I met 2-3 years ago that was on keto has gained all their weight back plus more.
Oh yeah.
And
it teaches unhealthy habits because, and actually we literally just talked about this on Thursday with Russell about how he was like, everybody 2-3 years ago was like, oh, keto. And you're like, oh yes, I can eat butter and bacon
and my
All
coffee.
the bacon I want.
and yeah, I could put all this MCT oil in my coffee and butter in my coffee and all this stuff. And it's just like, dude, no, just because you're not eating carbs does not mean that you're going to be in a caloric deficit and lose weight. And when you do go back to eating any carbs, now you've just gone from eating majority 1 or 2 macronutrients if you eat any protein to now you're eating 3 macronutrients.
Correct.
And your calories instantly spike by several hundred. Well, that couple hundred calorie deficit that you were in goes by real quick. And habitually speaking, your habits are just jacked,
And actually, this sparked an idea in my mind, more anecdotal. And for those of you who have heard the notion that carbs are bad, so let's look at carbohydrates. For 1 gram of carb and 1 gram of protein, there's 4 calories. For 1 gram of fat, there are 9 calories. For 1 gram of alcohol, it's 7 calories. But so when you think about it, like the value of 1 gram of carb is significantly less. It's 4
Almost
grams.
half.
It's half,
or it's
under half,
more than half,
than
or,
1 gram of
less than half,
fat.
sorry.
And I've actually collected data on this. Where I could go back and look at every one of my clients' applications. It would take me a while, but every one of my clients' applications when they start tracking their food. Because when a client wants to work with me, if they haven't been tracking, I need 3 to 5 days. I usually ask for a weekend, or at least 1 day on the weekend and a weekday, because there's generally a disparity in those calories.
Huge
intakes,
disparity.
right? And people are like, oh, carbs. You know what? The one macronutrient that I see most often, over 100, sometimes 150 a day, is fats.
Oh, yeah.
Carbs aren't the problem. It's total calories, of course, but
Fats add up the quickest.
Fats add up. And like, I know we were having this conversation last
Literally
night, Eric,
last night, yeah.
about like you prefer a higher fat diet, like 90 grams of fat, 100 grams of fat. I'm more of a moderate, like 60 to 80 grams of fat. So when I see a client checking in with their kind of their baseline data for calories and macros, and I see like 120 to 150 grams of fat, I'm like, how do you eat that much in a day? Like, my stomach kind of hurts just thinking about it, because I prefer more a heavier carb, more moderate fat.
And you're the opposite. Is that what we're saying?
I kind of prefer moderate. I actually, the funny thing is, as far as a percentage go, I'd say percentage of calorie wise, carbs and fats are usually fairly equated. As a matter of fact, it's funny. I'm almost equated across the board. I'd say a little bit heavier percentage wise on the protein, but yeah, I mean, like right now I eat about 225 carbs, 250 to 260 grams of protein, and about 90-ish grams of fat, roughly.
Yeah.
Which is a higher fat than most people prefer. But like Paul said, we were having this conversation last night, and I have a really difficult time keeping my fats sub, 70 grams, I would say. And that's just the nature of, the foods that I prefer to eat. Right. So, I eat a lot of red meat, very nutrient dense. It's good for you. People, think that too much red meat is bad for you. Well, in certain instances it could be, but
too much of anything.
A lot of times it's because it pushes your fat too high for what people should be consuming. And so, if I'm eating, a pound of beef a day, that's a significant amount of fat, so I have to, but the stipulation to that is I keep my carbs at a modest level, because like we've kind of beaten over and over again, protein and then total calories, you can kind of distribute your fats and your carbs how you prefer. And that's not to say that I do that all the time, because for certain activities, like if I'm going to go mountain bike, for example, I'll purposefully keep my fats lower that morning and consume a higher percentage of carbohydrates in an attempt to glycogen load for the activity that I'm going to do. So again, everything is tracked and things like that. But yeah, generally speaking, you can consume way too much fat and not even realize it. Yeah. Cooking spray, eating things like, red meat, mayo, olive oil, avocado. People think that like, oh, I'm putting nuts and olive oil on this salad, like it's super healthy. Well, that salad now has, 50 grams of fat, easy. If you're doing, a tablespoon of nuts, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, maybe some avocado on there, like
there it is.
Blast, it's through the roof, Yeah.
So. Exceptional. So it's interesting talking about it, because I think some of these diets or these fads or whatever, they force you to just take the extreme of taking out one of the pillars. Where
and
you just
people
said it's
are
all
attracted to that,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Because
that's
it's
a marketing
simple.
tactic.
It's simple,
right?
It's convenient, maybe. But.
Well, it's actually more difficult. It's crazy to me that people just like the it's kind of extreme, and so like it must work or something like. I don't know what.
I
the
think
heck
that
they
I
think.
think that's
Yeah.
it. I think that.
But it's like the thing that drives me nuts is a lot of people would rather cut out a whole macronutrient, carbs, rather than just track.
Yeah.
Like, and they think that, tracking, no, that's too extreme for me. I can't track. And it's like, you're willing to completely just cut out a whole group of macronutrients, but you won't track.
And the crazy thing is if you start paying attention to if you start paying attention to your dietary behaviors, let's say you could make a change in your day that would result in reducing 500 total calories from your day. That's one package of Pop-Tarts for those of you who don't know. Like, I'm just equating it with hyperpalatable food. Maybe it's 2 sodas. That's 300 calories. So let's use 2 sodas for example. Switch your two regular sodas to 2 diet sodas. You went from 300 calories to 0 calories. Well, 300 calories, let's take a compounding interest. So 300 times 7 days in a week. That's 2,100 calories. Guess what? You're going to start losing weight. Granted that your activity and everything else, and you're not compensating other places in your diet. But think about those, like, think about this as like retirement. Like, this is a health plan for you.
Right.
And in making those small, subtle changes like that, these lifestyle changes aren't a light switch. You can't just turn them on and off. Unless you're in prep, you better be willing to do that. But again, that's a different ball game, different context. So making those small, subtle changes is really, really important to adhering long term. And then guess what? You build on that confidence. Like, oh, I cut out 2 sodas and I replaced them with diet soda. And for those of you who think diet soda is bad, stop listening to this podcast. You're not our friends. And you build that confidence. So then you look in another area how you can improve your diet, and you make that change. And then it just, your confidence improves. Your clothes fit better. You feel better, more energy. You're stronger. You know, your sex appeal is there. Like, your libido, like all these things just start playing in favor for you. Guess what happens when you cut out carbs? You're fucking miserable. I have never met one person in my life who was on a keto diet that was happy. I don't even like talking to them. I would almost rather talk to somebody who's blitzed on alcohol because they're more pleasant to be around than somebody who's on keto. Like, think about that. Yeah. So again, celebrity endorsements, that's another thing. Stop listening to celebrities about their dietary advice or their workout advice. It's horseshit.
For sure.
It's absolutely, there was, I think you made this post. There's a celebrity, I'm not going to name the name, but you'll know who I'm talking about, that was promoting BFR training, blood flow restriction or blood flow occlusion, and the placement of the band was completely incorrect. So guess what happens? 1 million people see this person doing blood flow occlusion training or blood flow restriction training, and they're putting the band on the wrong place. Mm-hmm. It's mind-blowing. And it's the same thing with influencers. Like, I could come up with this crazy supplement that says, if you take this, you're going to get as vascular as me. I can say with confidence I'm probably one of the most vascular natural bodybuilders out there. Go look at my pictures. If you disagree, fine, whatever. But I'm super vascular. I could promote something and sell it because I'm going to make a quick buck, making you think that you're going to be vascular. Well,
people don't understand that that's highly
correct.
Genetically dependent.
Correct. Yeah. And then you have you'll have these fitness influencers doing like all this like glute stuff or like certain muscle parts, and they kind of work hard at it, but they're genetically gifted in that area, and people latch onto it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where are their clients? And they're not posting clients. That's the thing. Look at their social media. They're not posting clients. Do you think for a second somebody with 2 million followers is training people one-on-one? No,
they plug them into an app or they plug them into something and just feed them a bunch of just generalized garbage that's typically garbage because they're not adhering to evidence-based protocols.
Right. And then you have people that do, like, your Lane Nortons, stuff like that, who have tons of followers. And I respect Lane. He's done so much for this fitness industry. And I think he still does some one-on-one coaching, but he's not, I don't know what his client load's like, but he's come up with other avenues to help people without his one-on-one undivided attention. Mm-hmm. And those are the people who you should probably gravitate toward. Mm-hmm. He's a little bit more scientific, and he does break some things down quite nicely for people who are not science-minded. Mm-hmm. But again, you have to look at the social media content that this person is providing, and if you just have to use some critical thinking skills. Does it make sense? Like, is that what's really in the punch that you're drinking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if somebody's struggling or stuck with what they're doing, what's the advice that you have for them?
Oh, man. Well, I took some notes here.
Yeah, let us have it.
Okay. So this was a really good question that you guys sent to me, and I thought about it. And I don't have like a clear, concise answer. It's kind of generic, but it's kind of specific. So what I put is find one pillar in your life that's going well. We all fail. Every one of us in this room has failed. I've failed from a financial standpoint, relationships, career moves, schools, you name it. I've failed. I was kicked in the dick a lot along the way. And I know that's kind of putting it bluntly, but I was, right? So, and I'm sure all of us have probably experienced that in this room at least.
Well, in this room we all have, that's for sure.
That is true.
You have to look at those failures as learning opportunities.
100%.
That's where the evaluation comes into play. What could you do better? You have to know that things will get better along the way, but in order for things to get better, that requires action on your part. You have to work.
Absolutely.
Like, you have to. If you're not willing to go through, joy wouldn't feel so good if you weren't going through hardships sometimes in your life.
Absolutely.
So you really have to find that one pillar. It doesn't have to be related to where you're going, where you want to go at that particular point. Maybe your goal is to get on stage and that everything's falling apart because maybe your marriage is failing or your job's failing or something. But maybe like you just got a new puppy and that's going really well because your training with that new canine is going amazing. Latch onto that. Like find that thing that enriches that cup in your life and run with it. And you'll start to think clearer, you'll have a better sense of direction, and things will just start to kind of formulate. And the cool part is ideas are free. Like you can have a million ideas, but pick where you want to go and follow those ideas. Test it. If it doesn't work, great. You failed. So what? Pick a different direction.
Right.
So it's find that pillar in your life that's bringing you joy and follow that pillar.
Right.
And other things will blossom because of it.
Awesome.
I like that a lot.
So speaking of that, what are the first things that you think of when you get up in the morning? We talk a lot about people trying to build healthy habits with this podcast and, getting mentally in the right state. So what does your pattern look like?
Oh gosh. This wasn't on the questionnaire.
Oh,
You boom. It's a good question. I'm glad you. So, what are my thoughts?
Yeah.
Or
So, what is your what is your first thought when you get up in the morning? Like, what are you working towards in the morning? Are you, a lot of our guests, our listeners, they have kind of a morning routine that they utilize to kind of set them up for a better day. Like, what does your thought process look like first thing when you get up in the morning?
What's my objective for the day?
Yep.
And I attribute my work ethic to my experience in competitive bodybuilding. Competitive bodybuilding, it's like a metaphor for my entire life, right? So it's like, in order to be good at a chosen hobby, career path, whatever, you have to have discipline, patience. You have to embrace failure. You have to evaluate, and you have to continually go through repetition.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like mindless repetition. You actually have to be engaged in that repetition with purpose. So in the morning, like, what's my goal? Like I have to think, and it might change daily, but the end direction is there.
Yeah.
Right.
Like right now, my goal is to get into the bar and just build this empire. Right? Like I can say with confidence, this place is going to be the best place to train in Helena. Number one, because I just think it is. Like it's kind of a home.
We have that belief.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
Absolutely.
both my wife
As
and
you
I are
should.
Right.
like, we're outstanding trainers. I think my wife is probably significantly better as a trainer than me. She's just with her experience working with adaptive fitness.
Brownie points right there.
There you go.
Love you, Nikki. And so it's what's my goal? Like, what's my long-term goal? How are my actions? And we talked about this today. Is your goal to get up and have a garage sale to make $500?
Right.
When you could just donate it all to Goodwill and go like hustle somewhere else and make 5 times as much money.
Yeah.
And so we talked about this today. So
a garage sale to me is like, you just, obviously you're just like trying to make money, but off your old crap, like give that to somebody else and go give somebody else meaning in this world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like light all your old stuff on fire. Go give it to people that need it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And you're still like, you're doing somebody else a favor by, donating it to other people or something like that. But, to spend an entire weekend sitting on your front lawn, selling your old crap that, people may or may not want, right? Like just to make $500, like it makes no sense to me. Like go enrich the world and then see the return that way, whether that be, in whatever way of return, financially or whatever.
if your goal is to get wealthy, you're not going to get it through a garage sale.
You ain't going to get at a garage sale. It just strikes me as like a greedy, like a garage sale it's like a greedy person that just wants to clear out their stuff and then just make an extra buck.
Go give it to Goodwill. There's so many people that need things out there. So
especially in my neighborhood. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
the people that live in my neighborhood, like they're not poor. Let's just put it that way, right? They don't, an extra $500, at least I can't speak for everybody, but I mean, in general, is not going to be life changing to them, right? Like, but some of that stuff might be life changing to somebody that actually needs it, not somebody that's just toting around our neighborhood, like, you know, looking at garage sales.
Sure.
Right? Like, get a life. Sorry, that's my rant about garage
There's
sales.
the rant.
And yeah, people need things, you know, so go give them to maybe the less fortunate and just, you know, get rid of it. Like, save yourself a whole Saturday or Sunday or both days. And if you like garage sales, great, do your thing. Like, I'm not discrediting. If you like garage sales, go do them. But
I am.
It's a hobby.
I am. I'm
you know,
discrediting them. Screw
Eric's
you.
a little bit more bitter about
Screw
that.
you for garage sales.
I think,
No, I'm just
I
kidding.
think his parents sold his Mickey Mantle rookie card for like
Right?
$1, and he just realized it last year.
Dude.
Damn garage sales.
Damn garage sales. Yeah.
But have purpose in the morning. So I have this long-term goal right in my mind, and I'm not going to say my goals out loud because I just follow along with me and enjoy the journey, enjoy my successes and failures, because they're both going to happen, and you'll just
Rock
kind
and
of see
roll.
what happens, right? So I have this long-term goal in mind, maybe a shorter-term goal, but the number one thing in the morning that I do is, do I have purpose? What's my purpose for the day? What's my objective?
People need purpose.
That's right.
I am, and Nikki can attest to this, like, I have my blinders on right now, and I love my wife so much, and she's been so patient through this whole process with the bar opening. She just wants to help, and I love her because she'll do anything, and we work together as a team, which is great. But sometimes the best way to help me is to just kind of step aside, because
Let me be.
yeah, because I don't know which direction I'm going that day. All I know is, like, this is the direction I need to go, and this isn't a shiny object type of a direction. This is like, I need to get this done, and I need to, I don't need help doing it. I just need to be able to do it.
Right.
And anybody trying to help is going to make it that much more difficult to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of have my normal morning routine. I get up, I go through my, you know, morning ritual. I drink 20 to 30 ounces of water first thing in the morning. I wait about an hour and a half, 2 hours before I eat because I'm not hungry. I drink my cup of coffee, then I eat my breakfast. At any given day, I have anywhere from 6 to 15 clients checking in throughout each day of the week, and so it just kind of it depends on the day. Every day is a little different, but my, you know, kind of my habitual routine is still there. And, you know, I am Old Testament. I actually have a planner that I write things in, and I just switched to using a pencil last week because I was so tired of scribbling things out and running out of space. So I write things down. Like my phone, I've broken my phone 6 times in the last 5 months, so I don't put anything in my phone, even though you can save it to cloud and all that kind of stuff. I just like writing things down. It helps me remember.
Sure. Everybody has their processes.
Yeah. So
My
really,
wife's a write down person for sure.
what's that?
My wife's the same. She write down.
Yeah.
Hunter's a write-down person. He has an iPad that he legitimately writes with his pencil.
Yeah. So you could say it's digital, but I
That's
also
an
write.
adult Etch-a-Sketch. That's all
It
that
is. Yeah.
And my goodness, it works.
A little easier
Yep.
to use than the Etch-a-Sketch. I'd
Yep.
speculate, but
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
So yeah, I have this like I obviously have my routine for things that are like obligatory, like client check-ins, all those types of things, and then I text with my business partner, which is referred to as my second wife. Shout out, dude that lifts. We're constantly sending voice text and brainstorming and figuring out the next direction. Mm-hmm. And the crazy part is we don't know what we're doing that day. Like, we wake up, we know where we need to be,
right,
but we strategize that day about what we're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. And we support each other. And we've both been like frustrated, not with each other, but with like, he ordered turf. And it was in Billings, and it was supposed to be at the shop last week, and it wasn't. So we like called the shipping company and wrote them. We got the turf in, and so it's like, it's kind of
I
business,
can
baby.
relate to that.
Yeah.
It's a headache. Yeah.
So I don't have a blueprint for my day. I have a direction that I'm going, and
Got a plan.
you have to plan. But understand that plans. When has the last time you've had a plan go as planned? You have to understand that plans change. Like, we were supposed to be in the bar at the end of May. It's a month later, right? So we had planned this. It's actually a blessing in disguise because all the equipment was back ordered because of last year. So and shipping and all that kind of stuff. So it's all actually working out well because when we open, all the equipment should be there. Had we opened in May, I wouldn't be fully functional because we'd be missing 50% of our equipment.
Yeah.
Right.
So know that it's important to have a plan. What's your objective for that day? Look at your objective for the subsequent day the night before. Wake up knowing that plan can change, but your direction should not change if that's truly where you're headed.
Absolutely.
Right? I have, this is kind of off the beaten path. I've started my training business 3 times over in the last decade. And each time it's gotten bigger and better and more successful. So this is my 3rd time. So it's not that when I restarted them, it's because they failed, it's due to relocation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where my evaluation that I was talking about came into place. How can I do it better?
Well, it's almost
start
it
from
can
scratch.
be the silver lining of that is you're able to start again
yeah.
with the knowledge that you gained
yeah.
previously.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with that, I guess.
No.
Right. And I lost my. I had a shiny squirrel or shiny object kind of come across the table here for a moment. But
You need more sleep, Paul.
I need that aura ring. That's what I need.
Yes, you do.
That's
Little shout out to
It's-
the ring.
it's
that's some
fancy.
Star Trek stuff.
It
That's
is.
it's actually
One
really
ring
cool.
to
I
rule
think I am
them
going to look into that because
Yeah.
my sleep is definitely something that could improve.
There you
Plug
go.
it in. Plug it in.
But just know that if you I fail every day at something, and that's not an expectation. That's just something I'm going to fail at something. And I kind of going back to the thought that I had in my mind is reduce distractions, right? So
Absolutely.
specifically, I had Facebook and I had an Instagram account. Then I haven't had Facebook in over a decade, close to over a decade. And then when I started Coach Paulie this year, back in January, February, I had my Coach Paulie account and I had my Thor account. Thor's my old nickname. That's died. It's done and over with. But I was bouncing back and forth on social media between 2 accounts. I'm the same damn person. What do I want to grow? Do I want people to follow my personal life, which I really don't want to put out there on social media quite as
Right.
much anymore? I mean, I do a little bit. Or do I want to build my brand and business? And so I cut off the personal account. So cut out the distractions that aren't providing a return on investment.
Right.
I've never been motivated necessarily from a financial standpoint. I never got into fitness because of the monetary gain that you could get from it. I did it for the reasons of helping enrich other people's lives, because my client's success is going to turn into my success, and my business is going exceptionally well.
Absolutely.
It's booming. And I have people that I look up to, like EricCafferty. And I'm not saying that just because you invited me on your podcast. I'm humbled to be on here, but follow those people that are like-minded, that are going in a direction you want to go, and
Absolutely.
you have to implement those behaviors and processes that they're kind of going through to get to where you want to be, and cutting out distractions. And I'll be the first. We were talking about this on the way here. I'll catch myself scrolling through YouTube, watching stupid videos of people trying to entertain me, and I'm like, how is this gonna? This has no financial gain. This isn't gonna help me or help anybody else. Out with it. And that's just because those old behaviors creep in doesn't mean you're a bad person or a failure. Recognizing that
Right.
that's an old behavior that needs to kind of go to the wayside. That's success. That's maturity.
I like that.
And so that's something you have to think about, cutting out those behaviors that aren't contributing to where you want to be.
Right. Which
So-
can be difficult to do, but
Yeah.
you got to do it.
All right. Next question for you. Three people that you would want to have dinner with, dead or alive. You can choose anyone.
Okay. First person, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Okay.
Boom.
Okay.
Reason being, my dad and I would watch those Bloodsport,
Oh,
best
dude.
movie out there. Shout out to Jean-Claude. We would watch Jean-Claude Van Damme. The acting was terrible. Back, when we look at it now, 30,
Yeah.
40, 20, 30 years ago, it's quite a bit different. But
Epic.
Jean-Claude
Epic,
Van Damme,
yeah.
hands down. I think he's an interesting character, and he's practiced what he's preached his whole life in terms
Yeah.
of physical fitness.
There you go.
He's outstanding.
Machine.
So, Jean-Claude Van Damme would be the number one. 2 others. Man, you're really...
You can give us one other. One other.
Oh, boy. Dead or alive? Man. Do we have other questions? Can I come back to that?
Okay, you can think about it.
I do have to think about that. And that's really...
Okay. All right, top 3 books.
Fat Loss Forever by Lane Norton,
Yeah, that's a good one.
without a doubt.
Shout out, Lane.
There we go.
I've also read that. It's quite good.
Yeah, very...
Understandable.
very easy read for those of you who may not be super scientific.
Yep.
The Contest Prep book by Peter Fitchton and Cliff Wilson.
Interesting one. Yep.
For those of you who need know a little bit more about, contest prep.
Yep.
Oh man!
Shout out Cliff and Peter.
And the Boxcar Children, man.
The Boxcar Children.
I read
we
that
go.
as a kid in grade school.
Mhm.
Those are some good series.
There we go.
Those are my three
I like
top
that. I like you
choices.
reaching back in your.
Okay.
into the-
Top 2 movies. You said Bloodsport. What's the other one?
Step Brothers. hands
Oh,
down.
dude. Thank
Good for
you.
you.
Thank
Step
you.
Brothers.
Oh, yes.
Not even a question. Don't make a sequel, Will Ferrell, because you're gonna butcher it.
Yeah,
just
dude,
like every
nah.
other sequel.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure no, I guarantee you he's probably had the same thought. He's been of course he's been approached by moneymakers.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's
No.
do another one.
No, you can't. No.
Nope,
I
leave it
didn't
alone.
want salmon.
I didn't want a sequel. I said it 10 times.
Yes.
Or 7 times.
All right. Top gym song and band currently. Or you can throw some out there. What's your gym playlist looking like?
So I have everything from hip hop to rock and hard metal. I would say Metallica, without a doubt, is
It's a classic.
Yes, it is.
They're old and new both. Hardwired, their most recent album is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I pulled 550 the other year, 545 the other year under Eric's programming, I was listening to "Spit Out the Bone" by Metallica. So
There you go.
That's some really intense.
We'll remember
music.
that.
Yeah.
And then hip hop, my first rap CD was West Side Connection with Ice Cube.
There you go.
And so I would say that's on my playlist for hip hop. I like old school. The new stuff is, I would call it pop at best.
It's an interesting
There
deal.
you
I'm going to
go.
go in a little bit here. So I coach a basketball, and it's the younger generation of boys, and we were doing like this weightlifting deal that I was helping with, and I let them kind of choose the music. And I started it. Like I started with what I listened to, and just gets me absolutely fired up. Like, coach, this is like, what is this? This is not good. I'm like,
This
what are you
is
doing?
crap,
And then they go
coach.
to the hip hop, and it is far from pump. Like it's a lot more. Like it's almost soft. Like yes,
It's
they're
like
rapping and they're rapping about these things,
pop-ish.
but they're just like
Yeah.
it's like soft. I'm like, this is
What's going on here?
yeah. I don't know.
Okay, here's
I'm officially old, is what I
here's
think.
another curveball for you. Who would play your character in a biography?
In a biography. Oh man. Well, I guess are we talking famous person?
Yeah,
Chris Helmsworth.
there you go.
Because
Okay.
I am his stunt double.
There you go.
There you go.
This
Yeah,
one.
Or a runner-up would be Jason Momoa.
there you go.
I like
Yeah,
that too. I
could
like that
see
a lot, yeah.
I could see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
actually. That's more because
I'll do Jason Momoa. Yeah, he trains
Yeah.
legs.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
There we
there
go. Top 2 role models or influences in your life.
Parents. Hands down. Like, I think as a kid growing up, it was important to look up the sports model, like Ken Griffey Jr., Michael Jordan, things like that. But
Right.
they really didn't influence me like in my direction. I love both of my parents. Both very successful career-wise, philanthropy, in their nonprofits that they run. My dad actually started Never Forgotten Honor Flight, which is he's the co-founder out of Central Wisconsin, and they raise money to fly the World War II veterans to the monument.
Mhm.
And
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
he has raised a lot of money and awareness. And my dad was in the Marines for 30 years, so he's got ties there. So and he was a helicopter pilot, which is kind of cool. But at any rate, and my mom, tons of volunteer work in the AIDS world, running food pantries. She's a nurse by trade, stay-at-home mom. I love both my parents. I think they did an exceptional job raising me. So if you're hopefully you're listening to this, I love you both very much, and I'm glad you made my list.
Yeah,
That's
there
amazing.
we go. Perfect. Well, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. You have one more.
Well, yeah, because the question
Yeah.
that I needed to answer
Yeah.
was 2 more people to have dinner
Yeah.
with. The next one would be my grandma Davis. She passed away at 97 last year, or 3 years ago, in Butte, Montana. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to have dinner with her, one last time. So that would be really
Yeah.
important to me. And that would be the only other one. So
Beautiful.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good answers. Well, dude, I can't thank you enough for coming all the way to town to yap into our microphones.
wouldn't miss it.
It's been an absolute pleasure,
That's wonderful.
and I think we need to go train some legs. We need to get some BFR spin bike on.
Yeah. And for those of you watching, please don't try this unless I think we're both going to lose our breakfast.
Maybe. I think we've been on here long enough. I probably need to eat again before we train.
Let's have some of those brownies. Huh?
Yeah.
Those
Oh yeah.
brownies
No.
that in the meal prep brownies.
Oh yeah. No. We need to. It's Ava's cookie balls.
Ava's cookie balls.
We're gonna have some Ava's double chocolate cookie balls. They're phenomenal. I think we're gonna go get geared up on that.
There you
and
go.
Ready to rip. But no, thank you very much, man. Would you have
Thanks, Hunter. Thank you,
any closing statements?
Seize the day, guys.
We covered a lot. We
Yeah.
got to have you come back, have you on again.
Anytime.
yeah, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure. But I'm gonna pee my pants,
Yeah,
so
same
I
here.
think we're gonna wrap
Teeth are
this up
floating.
and rock and roll. Thanks for listening,
Thanks,
everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Power of Lifting podcast. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. For more content like this, follow Eric Cafferty and the Mecca Gym on all social media platforms.